guess is a right word to use right now, as the Mets' three-game series in Atlanta became one game, and now potentially two games on Monday, but that remains TBD as we welcome you to the 44th episode of The Queen's Connection, a production of Patton Sports Creative. I am your host, Andrew Patton, joined by the co-host who is not home. He's in Thailand right now, but taking the time to talk to us about what is going on with the New York Mets right now, and that is Corne Hogby. And Corne, like I said, I think there's some confusion going on amongst fans and maybe even the team themselves as to why they're in this position right now.
Yeah, it's a strange ending to the season. Could be a strange ending to the season. I think it already is. I mean, if you play now games in 2 days in a row, you're off, and then you go to Milwaukee for three, and then maybe to Atlanta for possibly two, and then maybe back to Milwaukee, or maybe back to San Diego, or maybe not at all. It's remains to be seen. So it's a very difficult ending for the year. It's definitely not making it easier to get far into the playoffs.
No, definitely not. And we talk about the circumstances that have been handed to the Mets, the cards they've been dealt. They're maybe not necessarily the most fair deck, but it's the situation they're going to have to play through. And we'll see what this team they talk about how this team's different from other teams and the resiliency and the fight back, the push back, all that stuff. This is the time to show it. Unfortunately, the showcase on Tuesday night in Atlanta was more kind of resembled the 2022 team in that 5-1 loss. I'm sure we can talk about that, but all the talk right now is just this uh, mishandling, I guess is the right word to use, between Major League Baseball and the Atlanta Braves, based on the article I read from the New York Post about, they knew this, they seemed to know this hurricane was coming, but the Atlanta Braves didn't want to reschedule stuff or move stuff because it sounds like they kind of wanted to keep the gate money. Is what I believe it was Joel Sherman who wrote the article for the New York Post. So sometimes, you know, I'm all about people making their money and whatnot, but maybe that didn't seem like the necessarily the right move to make. I know the Mets in the article, it was said that the Mets kind of pitched playing at least one or two on Monday, and then playing just two or one on Tuesday to get the three games in before the hurricane came. And they said no, we don't want to do that, and so perhaps some gamesmanship on the part of the Atlanta Braves. I do have to kind of say I feel like if this was the Mets were the home team, I feel like they would kind of do the same thing. To be honest with you, so it's hard to cast stones at the Atlanta Braves glass house, or whatever the saying is, but. Um, just an unfortunate situation for the Mets because, like you said, there's going to be a lot of travel, and um, it's just it's not a good look. I would say for the Braves and for Major League Baseball more in particular.
Well, I get that a team wants to make money. I get that, but on the other hand, these are important games that you have to play, and not only they are putting the Mets in a bad situation, but if the Braves go through, they aren't in a great situation to start their postseason. If they have to play those Monday games, it means that they have to play games to make it. If not, there aren't games. So that puts them in a situation where you're gonna put your A team on the field with your A starter, with your A bullpen probably to get to the postseason, and that definitely hurts their availability, especially for the starters. I mean, obviously, but also for the relievers in the wild card game. So um, I think it was smarter for the Braves to go for the smarter option to get the games in than the money. Eventually, I mean, if they now not make the playoffs, you eventually uh, lost all the money, so to speak. And now, so if even if it's money case, if your team perform, if you put your own team in a better position to perform, there's a better shot that they make the postseason. which eventually makes them more money.
Yeah, and the thing too is like with when it comes to this situation, like you know when a hurricane is likely to hit your area pretty well in advance too, so it's not like this got sprung on them. You know, they you probably at least knew this was coming for a week. I mean, I'm not a meteorologist by any means, but just based on how weather reports go, you know, you see the ones that like 10-day forecast and stuff like that. So like you kind of have at least an idea in advance of what's going to be happening in your area. So I just think a mishandle by the Braves and Major League Baseball, and like I said, you know, we're blaming the Braves and Major League Baseball, but let's not forget last year the Mets were a team that forgot to put a tarp on the field when a tropical storm was coming through. So who are they to kind of you know, to be fair, to be fair, obviously, you know, the games for the Mets at that point weren't as important, but they were important for the team they were playing, and that was the Miami Marlins. Um, you know, so I'm just trying to level the playing field because you know, but I think this is a little bit of a different scenario than the one last year. So, but like we said, they did get one game in on Tuesday. Not a great showing by the New York Mets. They lost 5-1. Um, Maybe Severino pitched a little bit better than the stat line showed. Maybe that was an argument some people made. But really, you know, like we talked about before, they talk about how this team is different to 2022 and whatnot. Well, they kind of look like the 2022 Mets in that series in Atlanta. Just a lot of, I think we talked about it in our chat. Said they look tight. You know, you think about the prime example is the Severino and Alvarez going for the ball, and Alvarez getting in the way, and that kind of opened up the floodgates a little bit for the Braves in that inning. I believe it was the third inning. I mean, the ball did come up on Acuna. Arcia had one like that as well, but you just kind of see things like that. Nimmo not being able to knock down the ball, then the short hop in left field. You know, just a lot of mishaps that kind of looked like a team that was I don't want to say nervous. That's not the right word, but like I said, tight. I think is the right word. You know, they knew what was at stake in this series, and once again, they didn't really hit Spencer Schwallenbach at all, and um, that's now a little bit of maybe a concern because if you do play Monday, there could be a Spencer Schwallenbach outing again. So who knows how the Braves or the Mets are going to utilize arms and whatnot, but um, you know, just a bad start to that Brave series that we thought was going to maybe hopefully last a little longer, but just the one game. And you know, what were your thoughts on that game?
I think every every type of a baseball game, every way of a baseball game, however you want to say it, we just were way worse than the Braves. I think early on, when you watched that game, it felt like it was a loss for some reason. Even when we were close, it just didn't feel like the Mets had enough. The Braves played with a lot of, fire, and I think the Mets looked a little bit flat. So yeah, it wasn't a great game, and yeah, the offense again didn't do anything against Spencer Schwallenbach, who has been a very good starter for the Braves this year. And Sevy I think the last three outings were okay, but not necessarily great. It seems like he had three starts where his line could have been better. Well, in my opinion, if you have three starts when his line could have been better, maybe he just wasn't as good, so to speak. So it's not necessarily a great stretch for Luis Severino. Um, yeah, we pitched another meh ball game. Let me say it that way.
Picking my word, meh. That's my word.
That's your word. Yeah.
uh,
Special privileges for me
right,
today.
right, exactly. Well, um, yeah, just not a great game. Just like I said, it resembled a little bit of that 2022 series in Atlanta to end the year. Then, and someone also made a good point too. Is like when did the Braves ever go to New York in September? The Mets always go to Atlanta in September. You know, so maybe there's a conspiracy theory out there
Just a
against the
good point.
Mets. You know, no, just kidding. I'm not going to put my
Well,
tinfoil hat on for that one, but
well,
you know.
I, I have had my thoughts about, MLB versus the Mets in earlier podcasts that it's not always the fairest, so to speak. So not gonna get into that in this episode, but that's maybe the conspiracy theorist in me coming up
No.
now in this case.
Well, with the one game being played in Atlanta, the Mets had to do a lot of watching the last couple of days, particularly the Diamondbacks against the Giants and the Padres against the Dodgers. So, with how those series panned out, the Padres were in a position where they could win the NL West. They lost the last two in the series with the Dodgers. The Dodgers won the NL West. The Padres are going to be stuck in the wild card. The Diamondbacks, they won their last game of the series against the Giants after dropping the first two. I know a lot of people are not happy with Mason Black of the San Francisco Giants, who got the start and was a little bit all over the place, to put it nicely. Um, but they were also facing they also had Zach Gallen on the mound for the Diamondbacks, and Zach Gallen is a very good pitcher, so it kind of felt like that was a definite mismatch there. But the Giants taking two of three from the Diamondbacks is huge. As we look at the National League wildcard standings right now, the Padres, they're at the top spot, but it is not locked up yet. So they do have something to play for uh, tonight against the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is the weekend series for them. The Mets, we know, are in Milwaukee to face the Brewers, and the Braves are home against the Royals. I don't know if Kansas City is even in the Atlanta area right now. I don't know how any of that's going to shake out. But they will play the Royals, who do have something to play for, because you look at the American League, the Royals are three up on the Twins, so just a win, and the Royals are in. Um, but they're also tied with the Tigers for the second wild card spot. Currently, Kansas City sits in the third spot. Um, so, there's something to play for there. If you want to jump the Twins and play the Orioles, or if you want to play the Houston Astros, I think I would probably rather take my chances with the Orioles than the Astros, just the way. I don't know, but that's just me. We don't have to worry about the American League for a while, but that's just kind of a look at the American League, because it does have some importance on what happens with the Royals and Braves. What do the Royals have to play for and whatnot? So there is something to watch there as well. So that is your a wild card look. Is there anything you would like to share? With how the wild card standings currently stand in either both leagues.
I think, well, I will focus on the National League. That's a little bit of the more important one for us to follow. Um, but yeah, I think that, I mean, the Brewers, they have nothing to play for right now. Maybe the Mets have a little bit of a luck with the Braves facing Kansas City and the Diamondbacks facing the Padres, who still, I think the Padres obviously want home field advantage, so they want that first spot. So they're definitely going to play for that. So maybe the Mets have some small advantage in that point, at least for facing the Brewers, who are now just third and know that they have to play in the wild card series against and at home. So they are truly set. They're definitely gonna ease some players, probably ease some starters. So they are ready for Tuesday. So there's a slight advantage for the Mets there. But yeah, it's a three-team race, with one team having two teams having maybe 5 games to play. Um, let's hope that the Diamondbacks falter and the Braves and the Mets do well, so we don't have to face them on Monday. If Rob Manfred and I would agree. I wouldn't care if we are the second or third wildcard spot. But just be in there, and I think we're all good. So I hope that if that's the case, then we can just have an off day on Monday and get to Milwaukee or San Diego on Tuesday.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And obviously, people are wondering: is there a scenario where the games on Monday don't matter as much for the Mets' sake and whatnot? And there is a scenario in that. This is SNY has been pretty good about updating things, about the clinching scenarios and whatnot. So I got it right here. Um, so we'll start with like the overall, and then we'll get into the complicated state of what's the possible scenario where Monday doesn't matter. So if the Mets do have to play, all 5 games, if they go 4-1 in those games, they're in. There is a scenario where they can basically get swept by the Brewers, but then sweep the Braves, and they still get in. Um,
Yeah, it's the
which
tiebreaker.
Yeah, which is I would say definitely not the ideal scenario because you're coming into Atlanta getting swept by the Brewers. And now you got to win 2 games in Atlanta, and this is a team that traditionally has struggled just to win 1 game in Atlanta. That's not the ideal scenario for me. The ideal scenario for me is this, but it requires help. Is that the Mets go at least 2-1 against the Milwaukee Brewers this weekend, which is possible. But also, you need the Diamondbacks to go 1-2 against the Padres, which is maybe possible depending on how things shake out in that series from who's getting playing time and whatnot. Because it's basically a combination of 2 Mets wins and 2 Diamondbacks losses, which equals 4. That's the magic number right now for the Mets when it comes to the Diamondbacks. Is 4, is what I read. So any combination of Mets wins and Diamondbacks losses that total 4, the Mets are in. So that is a potential scenario because at that point the Mets would be 89-71. The Diamondbacks would be 89-73. So the Mets could lose if they played both games in Atlanta. Theoretically, they could lose both games and still get in because of the tiebreaker. So thank you very much, David Peterson, for that great outing back in August in the series finale. And then Jose Iglesias for also getting the go-ahead hit in the 9th inning. So there, I didn't give just David Peterson credit. But um, basically, if you end the weekend with 89 wins and the Diamondbacks have 89 wins, you're in. I think that is more the ideal scenario for me. And like I said, it's a little bit of a tougher one because it requires help from the Padres, which they may be willing to help. They may not be willing to help. Who knows? But I just think that's the ideal scenario. You end the weekend with your playoff spot, and then the games in Atlanta don't mean as much to you, especially, don't put yourself in a situation where you need to go to Atlanta and win 2 games because if that situation happens, that the season's probably over. I hate saying something like that, but do you really feel confident or comfortable that the Mets can go and sweep a doubleheader against the Braves in their ballpark? Me right now, maybe this is still some, I don't want to say trauma or PTSD because that's actually a serious thing and people have that. But like just seeing how the Mets have played the Braves in Atlanta over the years, especially late in seasons, I don't feel comfortable about the Mets going there and sweeping a doubleheader.
Let's call it bad memories, Andrew. Bad memories. That's nothing more than that. Yeah, I doubt that we can sweep um, the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta if needed. I have a hard time believing that. So let's avoid that and just. I can see us winning one of the two. I think that's definitely something that I think sweeping a doubleheader is very difficult. Um, but getting two in Atlanta with everything on the line is going to be a tough task. So I'm with you. I hope the Padres help the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks overall lately has been the most struggling ball club of the three. Maybe Atlanta Braves as well, but they rebounded on Tuesday against us. So um, I still have the best feeling that we beat Arizona in this race.
Yeah, you've been on that train for a while about no, don't really focus much on the Braves, focus on the Diamondbacks, and I mean you're right in that fact, but it's always just harder to for some people to maybe be like not be focused as much on the Braves as they traditionally are. But you're right in the fact that Arizona was probably more the team to watch than Atlanta because I mean we like we've seen with Atlanta, it doesn't matter who's out for them. They always just find a way to get it done, and they're continuing to show that they can do that again. I did find this interesting because we were talking about the Padres having something to play for or whatnot. This is part of the SNY article. It's like the last sentence or whatever. I was skimming through it. Another situation here for the Diamondbacks and Padres, whatever. If the Diamondbacks sweep the Padres, the D-backs would finish ahead of the Padres by virtue of having the tiebreaker. Um, so the Padres can't really. I mean, they definitely have to win at least one game in that series. They can't afford to lose three at least. So I think that's at least comforting, maybe for some people. Maybe more me. Maybe I'm talking more about myself. But just I just want to make sure like the Padres have something to play for. They do tonight. They definitely do tonight. Because if they win, then they get the top wild card spot. So you know at least one game they're gonna be going all out for it. Um, but just having that, I guess,
Yeah.
kind of eases a little bit because the I mean, this is just that time of the year, and maybe I'm just a nervous Nancy always. I mean, you could probably confirm or deny that, but um, it's there's a lot of angst when you're trying to watch your team and hopefully they win, but then you're also focusing on two other games that are going on at the same time. So there's a lot of like you know one eyeball's looking one way, the other's looking the other way, checking the score of the other game. It's just that time of the year, and all the anxiety or whatnot is at a sky high level.
Well, just take care of business yourself in the series against Milwaukee. I think either way you have to. Um, so it is comforting to know that when you are able to win all three, I know it's a long shot, but when you are able to win all three, and the Padres win 2 out of 3 against, the Diamondbacks win 2 out of 3 against the Padres, you have an extra game on them. So and then maybe even you get in there by winning against the Braves. So um, it's definitely comforting because I do doubt that Padres will get beaten by the Diamondbacks 3 times in a row if they try, so to speak. And I know it's possible, it's baseball, but I doubt that the Padres will let their home field advantage slip away.
Yeah, and you're looking at the Padres tonight. They're going to throw you Darvish against Merrill Kelly, so that's a good pitching matchup out in the desert. For those of you who care about the Royals and the Braves, that we will for the time being. Brady Singer against Max Fried is a pitching matchup down there. Brian Snicker said, "No, you'll see when Chris Sale starts. They're going to wait when they're facing elimination is when they're going to start Chris Sale, but that might not happen. So who knows when they're going to throw Chris Sale? But the Mets are going to throw Sean Manaea tonight against the Milwaukee Brewers against Freddie Peralta, and then everything else is TBD for the time being. So um, kind of makes maybe things a little bit difficult doing player of the series predictions, which mine did not go as well as I wanted to last time, picking Luis Severino. So hopefully I can rebound from that. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend. Everything is going to be, as they say, we're going to play it by ear, see how things go the night before, and assess where they're at, and go from there. Which for which makes sense, but maybe for pitchers, whatnot, who like to have routines, that might be a little bit difficult thing to do. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch.
Um, I think I have to pick a pitcher for the next series, which I have no idea who they are. So I'm gonna pick a reliever, and I'm gonna pick a guy who we desperately need to get, yeah, maybe close some games. Not only in the next 3 games, but maybe also in the next somewhat game. So I'm gonna pick Edwin Diaz to do his thing after that big 6-out save. Well rested, obviously, right now. So Edwin Diaz is going to be in a lot of games if we need him, and he's going to perform well.
I'm going to go with someone who needs to get some clutch hits for the Mets this weekend in order to maybe potentially clinch a spot. I'm going to go with Pete Alonso, get some big hits for the Mets this weekend. So, the Mets could surely use it from him. And he's hit traditionally well in that ballpark, I think, at least in recent memory. So, let's go with Pete Alonso to have a big weekend for the New York Mets.
I like that.
for the quote unquote Alonso hater that you dubbed me.
That's all on you, Andrew. That's all on you.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap things up here. Be an interesting weekend nonetheless. So, Corne, through some technical difficulties, we thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your time away.
Well, do, buddy. Talk soon. And let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets. All right. This has been the Queen's Connection, a production of Pat and Sports Creative. Make sure to follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook. Just search Queen's Connection. We'll pop right up, and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen on Spotify or YouTube. And thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon, and hopefully we'll be talking about a postseason run for the Mets, but that remains TBD, so stay tuned for all of that.